Hi, and thank you for joining. I'm Lindsay House, and I'm a licensing and recertification specialist with the Pesticide Licensing Program here at the Washington State Department of Agriculture. The purpose of this informational webinar is to share some background on a proposed increase to the pesticide testing fee rules, and that increase involves updating our general pesticide rules, the Washington Administrative Code 16-228-1540. I just wanted to start off and share some background regarding what brought our department to this point of proposing to update our testing fees. In Washington State, we require many pesticide applicators, consultants, dealers, and structural pest inspectors to pass exams that are specific to their area of work in order to obtain the license they need. And requiring examination to issue a license is a federal requirement that Washington State has to follow. We administer exams in Washington essentially the same way that we've been doing it for decades, and that is mostly at WSDA locations, proctored by WSDA staff, and paper-based exams. We do have a contract with 2 community colleges as well as WSU County Extension offices to proctor private applicator exams, but the vast majority of the around 10,000 exams given each year are proctored at the handful of WSDA locations around the state. And to give a better idea of what that process looks like to those who may not be familiar, the first step would be for a prospective tester or someone within their company to give WSDA a call and find out what locations, times, and dates are available and make an exam reservation. Sometimes there can be a waiting period of weeks or even months depending on the time of year before someone can get in. Currently, we test weekly in Olympia and Yakima, and monthly or bi-monthly in Moses Lake, East Wenatchee, and Spokane. And to get to their testing sessions, testers often have to travel long distances, and when they arrive, they'll come in and take their exam by filling out a Scantron bubble sheet. They'll pay for their exams on the day of testing with either a check or a money order, as that's all we're able to accept currently. Their bubble sheets are graded by running through the Scantron grading machines that we have at either the Yakima or Olympia office, and then we fill out their scores on a paper score sheet and we mail those out. And that can take a week or two after taking exams for someone to actually find out whether they passed or not. We know that this system is inefficient, it has a lot of limitations, and that we need to make changes in order to meet the needs of our growing industries. We've seen pesticide licensing programs in other states across the country move to computer-based testing to solve those same issues that we have here in Washington, and they've done that with really great success. In fact, our neighboring states of Oregon and Idaho have both implemented a computer-based testing system that they've been really happy with. And we know that in order to best serve our industries and create a more efficient program, computer-based testing is the direction that we want to move as well. So while we know that computer-based testing is the direction that we want to go, we had some roadblocks in our way that needed to be addressed before we could move forward. We know that we will need to contract with a vendor that does exam administration in order to end up with a process that has the functionality that we're looking for. WSDA doesn't have the equipment, locations, or staffing necessary to implement computer-based testing in-house. And just to quickly give you a basic idea of what that process would most likely look like. The vendor we award a contract to would have the software and technologies in place that we need. So that vendor houses all of our exams, testing reservation portal, and those kinds of things in their software. The vendor will then have an agreement with professional testing centers across the state. So for example, a tester would use the vendor software to make a reservation at a community college testing center that our vendor has an agreement with, sit down at a computer, and the college can log into the testing vendor's software and pull it up there on their computer for the tester to take their exam. We've talked with and had demos from as many vendors as we could over the last year or so to find out how they operate, what they have to offer, and what they require. And from these conversations, it was clear to us that our current testing fee of $25 just would not be sufficient to allow us to enter a contract with a testing vendor, and especially not one that offers the different features that we're looking for. Our current testing fee of $25 is set by rule. So in order to move forward towards a computer-based testing system, we need to update that rule language to allow for an increased testing fee. Here's the current rule language, so as you can see it does explicitly state that an examination fee of $25 shall be paid prior to administration of any pesticide or structural pest inspector exam. So like I mentioned, we know that we will need to increase the fee from $25 in order to come into contract with a computer-based testing vendor. And that being said, our exact language is still to be determined. We don't have a specific amount in our proposal yet at this point. Our plan is to set an upper limit rather than either choosing a specific amount or omitting any amount and leaving it completely open. We felt that setting an upper limit would allow some flexibility when requesting proposals from vendors, but also put a cap on it so that we would need to go through formal rulemaking again if there ever was an attempt to raise fees in the future. And while we don't have a set in stone amount yet, after the conversations we've had with different computer-based testing vendors that offer what we're looking for, we anticipate the fee being somewhere between $55 and $65 per exam. We do know that this is significantly higher than our current fee of $25, and there are a few reasons for that. One reason is that part of the fee will be kept by the exam vendor, and then another part is going to the professional testing center that actually holds the exams. So for exams proctored through the computer-based testing system, WSDA will not be keeping any of those testing fees. Those fees will be going to the vendor and the testing centers. And the other reason for the higher fee is that the new system will offer some different benefits to testers and their employers, and we hope you'll also see the value in what computer-based testing has to offer. I'd like to share a few of the ways that computer-based testing could benefit our testers and their employers. The first area that we know that testers are looking for improvement in is testing availability. As you heard earlier, testing currently can be difficult to get into and require traveling long distances for some. Outsourcing to professional testing centers across the state should be a really great solution to that problem. We plan to require a minimum of 13 testing centers across the state, both up and down the I-5 corridor on the west side and all across the state on the east side. These testing centers will also have a much more widely available schedule than the specific days and times that testing currently occurs at WSDA. They'll have multiple days and times, which should be really helpful in accommodating testers. And we also plan on utilizing an online portal where either the tester or their employer can log in 24/7, so they aren't limited to calling us during business hours to see what location, dates, and times are available, and they can make the reservation themselves. And they'll also be able to pay while making the reservation using that electronic payment methods. The online portal is going to be especially beneficial for companies that sign up multiple employees. They'll be able to easily track who they have signed up and where, make changes, swap people out, and do all of that themselves without having to call WSDA. A benefit that testers will appreciate is the option for immediate results. Testers will be able to find out right after completing their exams whether they passed or not. So for testers that pass, this means they can immediately get to work. And for those that don't, they can keep studying and make an appointment to retest right away, rather than lose valuable study time waiting a week or more to get the results. And we'll also be looking for a vendor that gives testers a breakdown of how they did in different categories so they know where to focus their studies. For example, if someone sees they only answered 1 out of 5 calculation questions correctly, they can be sure to practice more calculations before coming in to test again. And that's something that's been really highly requested, and we just don't have the ability to do that with our current testing situation. We also foresee testers appreciating potential access to testing accommodations that professional testing centers can provide. And beyond these facilities just being generally more quiet and comfortable than WSDA testing locations, many also have private rooms that may be available for testers that might benefit from that. We anticipate faster processing of licenses, as the data will be sent electronically to our WSDA staff, rather than waiting for paperwork to be sent through the mail. And lastly, I want to mention that computer-based testing will aid us in improving exam quality. The statistics that these programs provide will help us to flag questions that may be unintentionally difficult or confusing, and because the exams are electronic, we will have the ability to make any needed changes much more quickly. We'll be able to update questions in the software rather than having to print hundreds of new exams when a change needs to be made. All that being said, I want to give you an idea of the timeline we will be looking at before implementation of a new computer-based testing system. We actually have already taken steps in that direction through an update to our statutory language. We had old language that required our department to collect testing fees, which would have prevented us from outsourcing to a vendor. We updated that language back in 2020 to allow for vendors to collect the testing fees. And our current step, as mentioned, is to update our rule language limiting the fee. We just filed the CR 101 back in August, and again, we don't have the specific language yet at this point. We hope to finalize our proposed language this winter, then file our CR 102 and go through that process, and that would involve holding public hearings as well. And if our rule is supported, we anticipate adoption of the final rule occurring spring 2022. Once that rule is updated, we want to get started as quickly as we can with requesting proposals from vendors, going through that process, and awarding the contract to the vendor that best fits our and our licensees' needs. And it will take a bit of time after coming into contract with the vendor before we actually have a computer-based testing system ready to roll out, though. From conversations with different vendors, it sounds like somewhere between 6 months and 1 year is expected before exams are ready to be proctored through the new system. That puts best case scenario implementation time at around winter of 2022. That being said, we're eager to get this process started, and we're doing everything that we can now to get our exams ready for as quick as possible rollout. We're making sure our exams are in a format that's easy to convert to the software and assigning topics to our exam questions for those topic breakdown reports I mentioned earlier. So we're doing what we can now to make sure we have as quick and easy transition as we can. That's what we have to share at this point. If you have any questions, you can either send them to pestlicenseupdates@agr.wa.gov, or I have my personal contact information listed here as well. Thanks again for joining, and of course we'll be keeping everyone updated as the process moves along.